Welcome to This Is Our Montana. I'm Mike Penfold, your program host. I'm standing in downtown Winnett, Montana, which is in Petroleum County. This is a very neat little town, but it happens to sit in the least populated county, probably in the United States, with a huge landmass. And this is the only community in this whole county. People are working hard to sustain this kind of lifestyle that this community represents. So we're going to be talking to some of those people today. I hope you'll join us.
The following are excerpts from interviews with Winnett ACES.
My family came here in 1914 and homesteaded here where we are.
1914.
Yeah. We moved here, we had kids, and we decided that we wanted to raise our kids here on the ranch, and we had an opportunity to come home, so that's what we did.
Oh.
It's really nice to have a school that's close, and it's a really good school that we're really proud of.
Critical part of having a sustainable community, isn't it?
I'm a member of the Winnett ACES, which stands for Agricultural Community Enhancement and Sustainability. We met, first it was a group of producers that the meeting was to talk about wildlife issues and how we wanted to handle wildlife issues as ranchers, as opposed to kind of top-down BLM telling us how we needed to do it, that we'd come up with some solutions.
What were the issues there?
Sage grouse and elk mostly. But as we met and we were talking, we were feeling like, well, yeah, there are a lot of wildlife issues, but really the issue is our community and how we keep our community strong and what we do for that. And so then the conversation kind of changed and it moved to, why don't we start with putting local beef in the school? And Charlie Algren had already done a lot of research into how to make that happen. And so from that meeting, there were several members that carried that idea forward and got that. So the other big idea from that very first meeting was grass bank, and that a lot of property is being sold to absentee landowners because it's higher price than agriculture can pay for it, and that just changes the dynamics of the community.
So are they buying it for recreation purposes, or? For
the most part, yeah. A lot of hunting, some fishing, I suppose, too, but mostly people are looking for hunting properties. And so when the people aren't living here in the community, you know, then we have fewer people on the ambulance crew and on the school board and all of those kinds of things. Our community just gets smaller and smaller. And so we felt like if we could keep those properties in agriculture and keep them locally owned and managed, that would be better, both for the opportunities that presents to agriculture, in that finding grazing leases is a really hard thing. And so especially for younger producers who might not have a land base and are looking for something to lease, it would provide an opportunity there, but then also help keep the community, keep more people in the community.
Are you and your husband in ranching?
We are, yes. We're transitioning our family place. So the grass bank is the big project, but we also have an education committee, and we've done a lot of educational workshops for producers. And then we did some follow-up on that, some financial planning for ranchers. And we just had Nicole Masters, who is a soil health guru. She came in June. And then we've done smaller events too. So we've done a lot of producer workshops, and then we've also done a lot of outreach. One of the things we think is important is that we help the general public understand what ranchers do and what ranching is about, and that means kind of opening up both our land, but just being willing to have a conversation.
You gotta talk to people, don't you? Yeah.
And that a lot of people don't have any idea what we do or how we do it. Wildlife does fit into that, and we have a wildlife committee. They have been mostly focused on elk and the elk overpopulation that's pretty standard across the state, that there are a lot of elk.
Working with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks?
Yeah, so we also have a historic buildings committee that's kind of just gotten rolling in the last year, and we worked on connecting the Flat Willow Hall people to a historian who got it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And then we've gotten some funding to do a feasibility study for restoring the courthouse. You know, I think there were maybe 12 at our first meeting, and they were like conservation district supervisors and county commissioners and stock growers and producers that were involved in those organizations. 12 for our community is really quite a few, considering there's only 500 in the whole county. That's everybody from babies to
the whole
And so we started from there. Our land project has a pretty consistent 15 to 20 people that are pretty active. And all of ACES has a membership of about 40. And so I think one of the things we really try to be sensitive to is that everybody who volunteers for multiple things.
Laura, what is it that you see as critical in sustaining this countryside, the kind of culture that we have here, a small community in Montana? What are the critical factors, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think agriculture is maybe the first one. I mean, in my opinion, obviously I'm biased.
Keeping the agriculture healthy.
Yeah, because the communities the size of Winnett really are reliant on the agriculture industry and the ranchers. But that's one of the things ACES has talked about a lot too, is that we are just as reliant on the community as country people, ranchers out in the country. You know, we rely on the tire shop and the gas stations and the grocery store, and that all of those businesses we're just as reliant on. But I think if agriculture goes away, those businesses go away also.
If you just replaced all of this with recreation properties, you
wouldn't have anybody on the ambulance crew, that's for sure. But there would still be, there'd be people, but there'd be people visiting, you know, and I think they appreciate what we have here too, but that if you don't live here and invest in it, you know, your time, more the social capital, not just money, that it doesn't keep going, that then you're going to Lewistown or Billings for services. One of the things about our group just in general is that we have a pretty good representation across the membership of gender and age. You know, that it's not a bunch of young people or a bunch of more experienced people, and not just men or not just women, that it's a pretty broad spectrum. And I think that makes a difference too, when especially new people to the community or young people returning home have a group that they can connect to that is positive and working. The school is definitely one of the reasons actually that we felt like we wanted to move home, because it's a good school and we feel good about sending our kids there. I think it's always because it's a small school and maybe doesn't pay as well as some of the bigger schools. It's always been a place where new teachers come, and they don't generally stay for very long. There have been teachers who have stayed and have stayed for 30 years, but for the most part, they rotate through on it. That's just kind of how it is. But partly because of that, things like housing for teachers are issues, and things like daycare. And this is an issue too for like at the courthouse and the county staff. If you were to move to Winnett for a job, you would need a place to live, and if you have kids, you would need daycare for your kids. And those are things that are in short supply. A daycare for children? Potential for doing something about that? There is, yes. So there is a group that's just this summer kind of gotten rolling. The Methodist Church has offered that they would provide a space, and a group of parents that are working on how to figure out setting up an official daycare and recruiting somebody to run it. You know, it's not surprising that so many of the small agricultural communities in Montana, and probably Wyoming and other places too, are struggling. I mean, and it's an important part of our culture in the state. Even for us who live in the city, having rural communities, and I like to come out here and hunt. I like to go into the bar at night and have a beer, and I enjoy talking to the ranchers. It's an important part, I think, of the experience of living here in Montana. So even though we live in the urban areas, having a sustainable Winnett is important to us. So, do you think you're on the right you think you got the right format to make this happen? I think it's one of the right formats. There are probably a lot of ways to go about it, but I think we have a lot of positive momentum, and we try to do things in a positive way, looking towards the future and the just being proactive as opposed to being reactive. And I think that's definitely the more fun way to do it that we have a good time when we get together.
Don't you guys ever argue about anything here?
Actually, at our ACES meetings, I'm always just really amazed at the respect that people have for each other and the way that they're able to have a conversation, that there is disagreement, but that they can talk about it and figure out, come to some kind of common agreement, instead of, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. There seems to be a discussion.
That's not the way it is everywhere.
No, I know. That's why I've always been just kind of amazed at how people are able to do that.
Well, I guess you've got some really deep family roots here that that help that, and people go back for generations knowing each other's family. That helps.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the fabric. I'm sure that makes it happen. Laura, thank you for the work that you're doing here. We really wish you the greatest success. You're doing good stuff.
Thank you.
It's good to chat with you, Diana.
Well, nice to have you.
You got a beautiful home here.
Thank you.
And a beautiful ranch.
Oh, thanks.
And you guys have been on this ranch for a while?
We've been here 42 years. Yeah, and then of course Jim grew up here. Then he was gone for 8 years.
So this is Jim's family's place?
Yes.
So you got quite a legacy on this chunk of land, don't you?
They do. His grandparents and great-grandparents at the same time came in 1914 and homesteaded. This has been well organized. We've had other times that we all got on board with different projects and everything, but this, because of the umbrella of ACES and then all these different projects that are really quite different, that's been helpful. More organized, more people on board. It's been very positive. We have 3 daughters, and these 2, Brenda and Laura, showed interest in coming back. And so, as you know, their college degrees, and they both have master's degrees, were not in agriculture or business. They were in, and they liked their careers, but they decided, in Laura's case, she wanted to raise her kids here, and her husband Levi was interested in being a rancher.
It's a great place to raise kids, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I can't take all the credit, but kind of spurred from my kids coming off the school bus telling us, and that goes back to some of the administration that was at that time, and the portioning of meals and so on and so forth, and the kids coming off the school bus hungry.
Oh boy.
And I said, well, shoot, we can do better than that for our kids in our community. And I brought the idea to the ACES group, and they kind of spurred a few of us on to go to the school board and get something done about it. And it kind of started from a stock growers mailing list. That's how we got in touch with the community. We sent an informational letter deal out to all the people that were on that list. And
What did you ask in that?
basically, if they was interested in donating a beef to the school and getting local beef straight from the ranch right straight to the kids in the school.
Wow.
And we had fairly good support. I mean, I think the first week we had 12 beef ready to go.
No kidding.
Yep. Yeah, our mailers, our list now is like 20 some long. It's every 5 to 6 years to get to donate a beef. If you wanted to donate a beef today, you'd have to wait 5 to 6 years to get on the list.
My wife's family, my wife grew up here, Chelsea. She and her parents still live here and have a little ranch outside of town. And originally my job had brought us out to California for about 6 years, and we got tired of having to fly back to visit relatives all the time. And so after my son was born, we moved back to where I grew up in Minneapolis for a couple of years, and then we decided we wanted a little bit of a change of pace, so we came out here where Chelsea's folks still own their ranch. And so now we're working remotely and really enjoying life out here. I work for a company that makes measurement equipment for communication companies. And so I'm able to do my job out here because, we have the courthouse had this open office, which was really nice. And also the really important piece was that Mid-Rivers has fiber coming to Winnett. And so we have the best internet connection here in this office that we've ever had in California or Minnesota.
Do you think having high-speed internet and all that technology is going to take away from the culture of this community, or do you?
No, I think it allows people who wouldn't otherwise be able to enjoy the community and the culture to live here.
Having a good school system is going to be important in your life, isn't it?
Yes, it's going to be very, very important. Just, I think having a variety of options for people who want to enjoy this kind of community and culture, having those options for people to be here, because without different ways of earning an income, it's hard for people to stay.
Yeah.
I work for a company, and I was fortunate enough that they allowed me to come take my job to a small town in Winnett, and they let me work from home technically, but where we live, we do not have internet, so I went en route to find something where I could do my job, and I found the courthouse, and they have high-speed internet, so I'm able to do my job completely. I am a data analyzer, so I need very efficient internet, so I'm able to run all of our programs. The school system they have currently, it does so well, but I know numbers are a factor, and so we're hoping to contribute some kids to that.
Are you seeing many young people coming back into Winnett?
Actually, yeah. Currently right now, with my husband, I've met through my husband a bunch in his class, and their wives have followed them back, and then there's more people coming into the community, bringing families too. I mean, it's not a huge, but it's definitely still cycling in. I think as the community grows into more sustainable ways of having some child care, that will open more gates for them.
Is that what you see as important, to have a sustainable community?
Yeah, you have to have options for people to continue to work in the community and a spot for their kids. And that usually rules out young kids and what those parents are going to do with those young kids. If you have a teacher, where is she going to have her kids during the time she's working? So, or he, either or. I think that a child care program would be great in this community. Definitely, you have a lot of ranch husband and wives. It would be great for them when you have big things come up. You have your shippings, you have harvest, you have haying. That would be a nice break for them. And then along with school teachers, it would bring in maybe some younger school teachers with younger families, so they actually have somewhere that's safe and good to put their kids when they're at.
The ambulance and the fire run separate from each other, but we assist each other when the need arises. So we have an ambulance crew, and then there is a fire crew, and then we do work together departmentally, but we are two separate.
Oh, I see.
This is a 2018 ambulance that the Petroleum County crew was able to acquire through a Department of Transportation grant. We take patients to Lewistown, Central Montana Medical Center, or we take them to the Roundup Memorial Hospital. From Winnett, Lewistown is 54 miles away, and Roundup is approximately 45. I'm an AEMT, which is an advanced EMT, and but we do have EMTs on the service.
Advanced. Does that take a lot of training?
It does take a lot of training. We have to take, I think it was a 40-hour course just to become an EMT, and then over time you have to renew that. For an AEMT, it's 36 hours of continuing education over a 2-year period, and then a 36-hour refresher.
I bet you get paid a lot for this, don't you?
Not a bit. It's all volunteer.
It's volunteer.
Years ago, when I first started, we would maybe get 10 to 15 calls in a year, but over time, that's increasing. This year, from January till now, which is August, we are at 30 calls, and we would consider that a high volume. I think we see it more and more every day that without it, Petroleum County, which is already very isolated, would be even more would be more isolated, really, if you didn't have resources like the fire and the ambulance.
Yeah.
Currently, a year ago, if you would have asked me the average age of our EMTs,
Yeah.
I would have said it's about 54 years old, because I think that's what it was. Now, with a little bit of young blood, the average age of our EMTs has probably dropped to in the late 40s.
Well, this is a new project that has gotten funded by the Department of Public Health and Human Services under a grant, and part of what we're using that grant money for is to make this room into a telehealth room, which will allow us to have our local people be able to communicate with their doctors or their counselors through a computer. And so basically this was an old storage room, so we've isolated it, repaired it, soundproofed it, tried to, it's not yet done, obviously, it's got painting and decoration.
You're working on it, aren't you?
Yeah, we hope it'll be up and running within a couple of weeks. We're one of the first places is kind of being the source, trying to go out and reach anybody, anywhere. Because we've got people that go to Great Falls for a 10-minute, checkup.
Oh, yeah.
That's a 3-hour one-way trip. So we're trying to eliminate that, most especially during the winters. Closest doctor from here typically is Lewistown, which is an hour away.
This probably wouldn't be for emergency.
No,
This would be-
there won't be anything here other than basic check-ins. You could talk to your doctor, and a lot of doctors, especially in this last whole COVID thing, have learned that they're good to see you and talk to you if you're being responsive enough. If your colors are fairly normal, apparently, they'll decide if they want to see you live and in person. But if it's just kind of, are your meds working? Are they not working? How you feeling? That's good enough. They're happy.
Yeah.
I think we're really hopeful that, we've got quite an elderly group here. We'd like to be able to keep them off the roads.
Yeah.
In bad weathers. If we can do that, we're going to think it was well
And
worthwhile.
I'm seeing some young families in town too, who's going to be having
Yeah.
children and things like that
Yeah.
require some medical consultation at times.
Yeah, and maybe they don't need a full drive to town to talk to somebody.
We are in the process of building a community center for our community. We're going to make the facility large enough where we can have large events, because right now the only place we can hold them is at the school. And so we want to make it big enough for funerals, weddings, places for youth to use after school, and the senior citizens, of course. And then we want to have a place where people can come, play cards, tell stories, just intermingle. We want high-speed internet, a wonderful sound system. We're going to have a stage in the large gathering area so that we can have dances. And when Larry came with his donation, Larry Carroll.
Carroll.
Yes, he's an alumni of Winnett High School. Oh. He came and visited with us during the all-school reunion. And Gary King gave him a packet, excuse me, sent him a packet with all the information because he showed interest in the project. And the next thing we know, that she received the phone call that he was going to donate to this cause. And Gary said, well, that's great, thinking, it will a couple $100. And when he announced the $5 million, we all started crying and
my God.
was wondering if we needed champagne right away. And we had to keep it under our hat because we were scheduled to have a public meeting with all the people of the Petroleum County. And we could hardly contain ourselves because we wanted to make the big announcement. We wanted Larry here, and he came. And he stood up in front of the Petroleum County residents, and there was about 150 here, and made his announcement. And you could have heard a pin drop.
I bet that floored everybody, didn't it?
He said his heart has always been here. We formed a board, and we have committee members, and wonderful, wonderful team of people. And we just keep forging on and taking a step at a time, and it's just blossomed. It's just been outstanding. We are so fortunate to have young folks on our committee. When I retired as postmaster, after being postmaster for 30 years, my husband said to me, what are you going to do for a project? And I says, I'd really like to have a community center because the seniors right now are meeting in the basement of the courthouse, and they have 15 steps to go up and down.
Not convenient.
And it's not level, it's not ADA or whatever you call it.
It ain't appropriate.
It's not appropriate for them. And I says, you know, they need someplace all on one level. And I says, we need someplace to gather, you know, and he says, well, good luck. And so he says, well, I'm going to have a meeting. I says, I'm just going to call and I'm going to have a meeting. I'm going to put posters up and see if I can have any results. He says, well, how many do you think will show up? And I says, I'm hoping 3. 15 people came. And from there on, it's just ballooned. It's just been great.
You know, I'm trying to think. You're Petroleum County Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
And you're also Petroleum County Manager.
Correct.
I wonder if there's anybody else in the United States that shares those 2 titles.
Well, I'm also the Disaster and Emergency Services Coordinator as well, so guess, and if you put all 3 of those together, probably very few. Sheriff's Office has 2 guys, full-time, myself and another guy.
Got 1 deputy?
Yes, sir. You know, it used to be Petroleum County when it started and broke off from Fergus County, and the early 1920s or mid-1920s, it was, you know, there was 4,000 people in the town.
Yeah.
There was 2 oil refineries in the county. There was oil production all over in the Cat Creek oil fields, and then down south in the Rattlesnake Butte oil fields.
Had a railroad depot here too, didn't
They had
you?
a railroad depot that came through town here.
Is funding county services a pretty significant challenge for you guys?
Yeah, so I think it's a challenge for every county, but when there's 500 people in your county, it's a pretty big.
Yeah, and all this landmass. Wonder how many county roads do you have? Do you have a mileage of it?
It's just over 500 miles of county roads.
Oh my goodness.
One of the things that makes Petroleum County the most unique is its size, is the few people in the county, and the fact that we're a kind of a different form of government compared to anywhere else in the state of Montana. And there's only like 4 or 5 of them in the whole United States, and that's the managerial government. We're the only non-elected county. The only there's 4 elected positions in the county, the 3 commissioners and the judge. How do small communities succeed and not fall off the face of the earth? And I think that the answer to that question is that places that succeed, even with small populations and small incomes and things like that, are places that seek out and I guess embrace technology, embrace, I don't think that a community has to change how it is and what it is and its personality, let's say, just because they embrace technology and move into the modern era, you know. I think that is, you can still maintain your personality, you can still maintain your way of life in a small community, even though you embrace the things like technology and things like that. We've got a guy here in this community that sells Bluetooth cameras that you can put in your barn. You know, there's embracing that technology and embracing what today's society is, yet still maintaining your personality and maintaining your way of life in a small community is not an unobtainable goal.